Well, hello and welcome to the Movie Paradise. I am your host, Nathanael Molnár, and this is Movie Night Tonight. Every single week, we watch a new film and talk about it in depth, with each month having a new theme. We are currently in the month of December, which is our month of holiday movies, and the movie we're talking about tonight is A Christmas Story from 1983. I am your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'm joined by a great panel today. With me, I have Rob Giachinta.
Hello.
And my dad, Michael P. Molnár.
Hello.
So this is a spoiler discussion. So if you have not seen A Christmas Story before, go watch the movie.
Who hasn't seen it before?
Well, Rob hasn't.
Well, I don't mean to spoil it for you, Rob, but come on.
I was the last one.
Last one. So if you have not seen the movie before, come back after you have seen it and join us for this discussion, because we are talking all things A Christmas Story right now.
We're giving out all the secrets.
All the secrets, yes.
About to spoil.
There's more spoilers in here than Infinity War, I'll say. So we'll start things off by going around and saying what our first impressions of the film are and roughly how many times we've seen it, starting with Rob.
Put me on the spot. I thought it was all right, if I'm being honest.
You haven't seen it before.
I had. This is my first time watching it.
Wow.
There were definitely some jokes I definitely enjoyed. A lot of it seemed kind of to be outdated, in my opinion, if I'm watching it.
Well, it is 1983.
No,
yes.
I understand it. But
and I'm saying that to your point.
There's like a movie like Alien. The stuff in that movie is somewhat outdated, but there's still enough in that movie that translate to this day and age. With A Christmas Story, I really had a hard time connecting with really anything that was going on. And I'm not saying that's a fault of the movie, but for my enjoyment of watching it, I didn't really pick anything out of it. Like, this is, I don't think I would ever watch this again, to be completely honest. Like, this wouldn't be like a Christmas tradition for me.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. First impressions.
Did we watch the same movie?
I was on the other
This
house.
was awesome. I can relate to so much of this movie. Oh my gosh! We did not see the same thing.
I think.
Can you edit him out? Oh my gosh!
Well,
wait.
I think someone needs to understand the subjectivity of film. There's also a generational gap.
No. Listen, the movie. All right, so the movie came out in '83.
Yes,
it took place in 1940. There were so many themes.
It took place in 1940.
It was 1940.
I didn't know it took place in 1940.
That makes sense.
Do some homework.
I thought it took place in the 80s.
What?
There was no TV. There was no TVs. Okay. They were driving like huge cars. Like,
who did I watch this movie with? Oh my gosh!
I didn't know it took place in the 40s. All right, go ahead.
There was no TVs in sight.
Oh my word!
They were listening to the radio. Like,
well, I mean, like you
wait,
listening to the radio.
Annie.
I clearly was not alive during this time, so I was not.
Clearly?
Yeah.
Were you awake during the movie? I don't know if you were awake during the movie, because I know Rob wasn't. Oh my gosh.
First impressions.
The movie was great. It holds up. It definitely holds up. And I've got lots of reasons why, and I'll tell you those reasons.
We will be getting into those reasons.
Okay.
I think it looks like I'm going to be the mediator of this. So I've seen this movie many times.
Yeah, how many?
A lot.
What's a lot?
As much as him.
I don't know off the top of my head. Roughly, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times, I would say. I've seen this movie over the years. I really like this movie a lot. And I agree, Rob, that definitely there are elements of it that are outdated. But I think with any movie that is older, there are always going to be elements of it that are outdated. Especially when you're dealing with families and just living situations and living in the present. And so I agree that it is outdated, but I think at least in my case personally, and maybe it's just because I've grown up watching this movie, and so I have more of a natural inclination towards it. I would say that those elements work for me, and that it's not as hard for me to get my head around it. But I can totally see where someone watching it for the first time in 2018 looks at this movie and sees a lot of elements that don't necessarily exist or are present at all in our society today, and there's a harder there's a gap between that it's harder to get over.
I just the humor to me was very kind of off-putting. That scene where like she was like told him to pretend like he was a pig and eating the food. I just it was disgusting. I
think that was the point.
Just me. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you guys.
All right.
I'm going to ask you some questions.
All right.
When you were growing up,
Yep.
was there anybody who was a bully towards you guys?
No.
You were never bullied?
Not joking.
We're not giving locations. So don't give names. You either a bully, a toady, or somebody who was bullied. Which were you, Rob?
He looks like a toady to me.
I was a toady.
Okay, so you were a toady. Everyone can relate to that. Everyone. There are themes all throughout this movie that everyone can relate to. Everyone can relate to the bully, the toady, or being bullied.
All right.
That's one of the things.
We all know a toady. You know a toady.
You know a toady. All right. All throughout the movie, there are these universal themes. Even if you did not experience it exactly like this, you can pick up on this. And the fact that it takes place in 1940, it was filmed in 1983, and here in 2018...
Well, not filmed in 1983. Came out in 1983, probably filmed in 82. It is my job as the host of the show to bring an accuracy
You
to
didn't
the
even
show.
know it took place in 1940.
Yeah.
You thought it was 1983. So the fact that all these different time spans can be, and it holds up. It really does hold up.
It looked good.
What else came out? What else came out in '83?
Return of
Gremlins.
the Jedi.
E.T. was 82.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah, Return of the Jedi
would
was
those
83.
hold up like this now?
I can watch
This was
E.T. all the time,
universal.
in my opinion.
Well, I think there are definitely parts of this movie where it cements itself in the time that it takes place. Like, I think
Yeah,
movies...
1983.
I think, movies like E.T. or, those are kinds of movies. There are definitely elements of those films where it specifically roots itself in the time that it takes place. But for the most part, there are universal qualities of the film, from the narrative to the characters to the dynamics. Everything is larger. It transcends the time that it takes place. And I think that with A Christmas Story, I think it's a mixture of what both of you are talking about. I think there are definitely parts of it that it absolutely transcends the time that it takes place and the time that it's set in, but then there are also parts of the film that keep it back and hold it into that box of when it came out and when it takes place. So I think both of you are right in this instance.
Thank you.
Welcome.
You guys are both wrong. This is a great movie.
It is a great...
There are great themes in this movie that as an adult you look back... Maybe you guys aren't old enough. I don't know.
Yeah.
You got to look back on life and you realize that these are echoes from your childhood. You have the adult version of Ralphie is narrating this whole story. Mm-hmm. And he's looking back at it and you can see how he sees the world. I mean, the whole scene with his teacher where he's writing... Oh, I'm sorry about all these spoilers. But he's writing his theme... And he's hoping beyond all hope that she's going to read this and it's going to be his key to getting his Red Ryder BB gun. Mm-hmm. You've never had a situation like that where you gave off to an adult an idea, a dream that you had, trusting that this was going to...
Why are you looking at me? He's the one who said he can't connect to it. I love this movie.
Oh my gosh. There's just so many. To me, there's just so many things you can relate to that go way beyond the time. It's not a dated movie. The themes are universal.
I'll agree with you. I agree with you because I completely think that this is a relatable film, and even having not grown up in this time period at all, I can relate to it still, and I do believe that the themes and the messages and everything are universal. However, I can see where that might not be universal for someone else.
What was your opinion on the whole narration of the movie?
I've loved the narration.
Oh, really? Okay.
I thought that... Well, see, I think the narration adds a lot to this movie. I think it helps...
I think the narration makes the movie.
Well, I think the narration gives it context, and especially since what you were talking about how it's a person reflecting on their life and when you're reflecting on your life and how you look at things, I think because you have that context starting out from the beginning of the film, and you understand that this is someone reflecting on their past, that is how a lot of the more fantastical parts of the movie are justified, where you have these visage and daydreams of Ralphie thinking about, oh, this is what could happen if I got my BB gun, or this is what could happen if my teacher read my paper and gave me an A+. It's all through the minds of a child, and it becomes distorted as a child, and that's how you can have these scenes where you're supposed to be saying all these swear words, and Ralphie is laying into the kid and is quote-unquote swearing, even though we don't hear the swears. That's also a ratings thing, but that's also because this whole film is through the distorted perspective of a child. And so I think the narration gives it that proper context and really helps shape the movie, as well as gives... I just think that the narration... It's also very well written, I think. The narration's very well written. And I think it really adds a lot to the film.
Well, and I think what speaks to the narration being so well written is that there's not really that much of a plot to the story. It's a series of memories that are shaped around, a week before Christmas?
Roughly, yeah.
You know? And so the narration just really brings all these random memories together. And you have this compelling story that ultimately he gets his Red Ryder BB gun.
Yeah.
You know, this thing that he's been hoping for and pining for all this time.
It's not necessarily a narrative-driven movie, but rather like a character and goal-oriented film. It's all about Ralphie and what Ralphie wants, and that ultimate goal of he wants his BB gun. And that's what drives the film, rather than this strong narrative that goes from beginning to end.
See, and that's what I like. When I watch a movie, that's what I personally look forward to the most, is a strong narrative. And while that was lacking, I wouldn't say necessarily that was a detriment to the film, but I think I would have appreciated it more if it had more of a structured story, I think, with a clear beginning and a clear end.
See, well, I think to your point, I can understand where you're coming from. That
I think you need to indicate that you're talking to Rob, because they can't see us.
Yes. Rob, I can see where you're coming from, but I think it's the exact point that there is no overarching through and through narrative, because this is a collection of a few days in a character's life. This is the week before Christmas, and there isn't going to be, other than the fact that it's all leading up to Christmas, I don't think there would naturally be a through and through narrative from the start of the movie to the end of the movie, other than the fact that it is Christmas and Ralphie wants his BB gun and everything like that.
I think that the movie was based on not a single story, but a collection of short stories.
Oh, okay.
I think so. In which case, I think the writing is even all the better, because I think that they pull together all these various elements and make it a cohesive whole.
Yeah.
I will give some positive to the story. I did like.
Oh, nice. Good.
The father character, he kind of reminded me a little bit of my dad with the ultimate, like the changing of the tire and stuff like that, and like fixing everything in the house. Like that was one of the things that I could resonate with.
I think that the acting overall was really good.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I really do. I thought it was very consistent. I don't think there were cheesy moments, but they were intended to be cheesy.
Yeah.
I thought the fact that there were so many kids in the movie, they did a good job.
And I think the film itself is written and structured around the fact that there are kids, and we've talked about on the show before that my personal opinion on child actors is that 9 times out of 10 you're not going to get that good of a performance out of a kid.
You know, they suck.
To put it bluntly.
I feel like that's changed nowadays, though.
Well, I think we see some of the exceptions, and I think we know a lot of the exceptions. And there certainly are exceptions, and when you can get a child actor who can give a really good performance. And we talked about this specifically on the show a couple weeks ago when we watched Home Alone. And we were talking about the fact that whole movie relies on Macaulay Culkin's performance. And if you don't have a good child actor in that leading role, the whole movie falls apart. And I think you can make that same case for A Christmas Story. If you don't have good child actors in these leading roles, and it's more than just one, unlike Home Alone where it's one performance, it's more than one in this. And if you don't have those key child actor performances in this film, the movie doesn't work. And so I think absolutely, yes, it is a testament to the film and to the director that you could get such good performances out of the kids in order to make the movie work.
And it wasn't even like they had to act like kids from their day. They had to act like kids from back in 1940, too. So that's another accolades I'd give them.
Yeah.
Did you like Home Alone?
Yeah, I love Home Alone.
Better than this?
Yeah, that's right. I like Home Alone more than Elf. This was better than Fred Claus.
Good. Better than Fred Claus.
All film is subjective, and we can...
Subjective?
Yes, that is the underlying
All right,
principle of
Peter
film.
Billingsley, the actor in this, the boy, he was fantastic. He was great. The younger brother, I thought he was convincing. That was like the stereotypical younger brother.
Yeah.
I thought he was great. The friends, the bully, all of those kids. I thought they did a great job with the whole thing.
And definitely, I think the film is definitely written and tonally geared towards these kids. And I think maybe these kids are not the greatest pure thespians, but I think in this movie, and they work because the tone is shaped in a way.
Macaulay Culkin is? I mean, jeez
Well,
Louise.
we talked about that in that discussion.
All right,
that
well,
he
I haven't
isn't
listened to that one.
necessarily-
I'll have to go back into the archives for that one.
So on the show, for this whole month, is all holiday Christmas movies. And so
We can say that now.
So a running thing that we've had for this show for the past 4 weeks that we've been talking about is dissecting and interrogating whether the film that we are talking about is truly a Christmas movie. We've talked about It's a Wonderful Life. We talked about Home Alone. We talked about The Night Before, and now we're talking about A Christmas Story. And I think in the past we've had, with It's a Wonderful Life, we came to the conclusion on the show that we don't think it's necessarily a Christmas movie, but rather a Christmas classic, because the film in its pure DNA is not a Christmas movie, and if you switch out Christmas with another holiday, or if it's taking place in just another month, It's a Wonderful Life is not, you don't lose anything with the film.
I never saw that movie.
I haven't either.
You haven't seen it either?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. I had not seen it before we talked about it on the show.
Oh.
And then we came to the conclusion on the show that both Home Alone and The Night Before are inherently Christmas movies.
Home Alone is a Christmas movie? That is not a Christmas movie.
It absolutely is.
It is not.
It absolutely is.
That could just be another.
No.
They went on vacation.
They went on vacation.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's a Christmas movie.
Well,
Everything
By
from
your
the themes
guidelines, I
to the
don't
messages.
know if I can.
You can go back.
It's a
and-
Wonderful Life is not a Christmas movie, but Home Alone is.
Yes. You can go back and listen to the episode and we make our case.
I'm not.
So I posed a question to you guys, and I'm sure that it's because it's in the name, it's a very simple answer, but I want to get down to exactly the reasons of why this is the case. What is it inherently in A Christmas Story that makes it a Christmas holiday movie?
Oh, this isn't a Christmas movie.
No?
No.
Well, it's in the title, Nathaniel.
It could be a Halloween story. It could be a Thanksgiving story.
It's a 4th of July story.
It definitely is, because the whole crux of the story is the week before Christmas and what it does to this young.
Well, so many of the memories are all tied into Christmas. I mean, who doesn't get the Christmas presents that they don't really want, like the socks and
and the
bunny
Who
outfit.
hasn't gotten the giant pink bunny suit?
All right, maybe
That was
not
the highlight of my Christmas.
Not the specifics, but something like
Yeah,
that.
no, I know.
And then, you only have to wear it when your aunt comes to visit.
Yes.
Right? Everyone has gotten that gift. All right, you don't have to do anything with it, but when they come to visit, you have to pretend that you really like it. So all of those things wrapped up. Of course, it's a Christmas story.
No, and I would completely agree. And I think, whereas with other movies, we've seen Christmas as more of the backdrop of the film, and it's just a movie that is
Like
set
Die
during
Hard?
Christmas. Exactly. But in the case of A Christmas Story, taking the fact that Christmas is even in the title, taking that part aside, the movie is... If you take Christmas out of this movie, it is no longer a movie. And there are a lot of quote-unquote Christmas movies that you can't say that about. That if you take Christmas out of it, that it's no longer a film. You can say that about A Christmas Story. The movie hinges and is shaped entirely along the lines of the fact that it's all dependent upon the holiday of Christmas. Everything hinges on Christmas, and if you don't have that, then the movie doesn't mean anything. And I think kind of what you're going on with when we, Rob, when we talked about The Night Before, how Christmas becomes sort of a character. Mm-hmm. I think you could say that in a way about this movie, that everything is shaped and hinges on Christmas.
So what did you think about the dynamics, the relationship dynamics between mother and father in this?
Well, how do you mean?
Well, so this is 1940s mother and father dynamics, seen through the lens of an adult when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Filmed in 1982, but comes out in 1983, and now watched in 2018.
Yes.
What, I don't know, I'm just curious about the different dynamics, because you've got relationships all over. You've got the dynamics between the mother and the father. You've got dynamics between parent and child. Mother and son, father and son, brother to brother. You've got race relations in there. You've got everything going on in there. So I'm just curious what you guys were thinking when you were watching those interactions with the different types of characters.
It didn't feel as dated as it could have felt. It could have been a lot more of, I think you definitely have some stereotypes in there, and there definitely are stereotypes present. But I don't think it's stereotypes to the point where it becomes detrimental to the film or that it's hard to watch. You don't have any, and we talked about this on the show when talking about It's a Wonderful Life, you don't have any moments where you're like, okay, it's that scene of the movie that you just want to close your eyes and fast forward when you're watching the movie. Because, it's an older movie, and there's going to be the racist scene or the sexist scene. You don't have that in this movie. While it definitely does play up stereotypes to a point, it never becomes to the detriment of the film.
Well, and I think in some ways it kind of pushes back on the stereotypes also. I mean, there are times where the mom is definitely the 1940s mom, when they went through the whole thing where, mom has not had a hot meal in 15 years because she's constantly getting up to refill their dishes and things like that. But then
the kid can just get his own damn food.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely you've got those pieces that are playing there, but I feel like the movie is kind of pushing on those also, because you got the scene where the mom, waters the plant, quote unquote, knocks over the leg lamp. You've got that whole scene going on, and then just a couple other things where she kind of like breaks out of what that stereotypical mom would be. So I think that it goes along with it, with all those stereotypes, but then pushes up against them also, which I think is interesting.
I think you also see that with the dad, because I think in the movie, like, of this time period, like, the consensus is that the dad is just the emotionless man who just kind of does his work and yells at the kids and comes in and out, but I think we see...
And what's wrong with that? This seems fine.
But I think in this movie, you do see moments where the dad has more dimension to him than just being that. You have points where, Ralphie comes in with crying and the mom says, "Oh, don't worry about it, just read the funnies," and he just goes back to it and doesn't care at all that his son's crying. Yeah. But then you have more tender moments where when you have at the end of the film, when he gives his son the BB gun, and it's him, he's the one who gives it to him, and you can just see the joy in the dad's face watching his son open up that present because he knows how much it means to the kid. You have some of these more tender moments that play against those stereotypes that were being perpetuated about fathers and men in general.
Yep.
Did you see any real connection between the mom and father, though? That was one, like, I didn't really see, like, why they were together.
Well, I think it might work into the fact that this is from the perspective of a kid. And so when you have, like, an 8-year-old kid or a 7-year-old kid, the kid doesn't necessarily pick up on those parts of a marriage or a relational dynamic. You don't necessarily see that. You just kind of see your mom as your mom and your dad as your dad. And you don't necessarily think about the fact that they are actually in a committed relationship or in love or anything like that. You don't necessarily see those elements or pick up on those parts when you are a kid. And so I think the fact that we don't see a lot of those parts in the film, I think we see a couple of little more tender moments, but we don't see that throughout the film because it is through the perspective and memory of an 8-year-old kid.
I think the movie did a pretty good job of capturing the complexity of a relationship like that. Yeah. Because there were times where, the mom was long-suffering and she's doing this, and the dad is, he's in his own, stereotypical way of, this is what he demands, and he's the king of the castle type of thing. But then there were definitely times where she was very frustrated with him, and she was like mocking him almost with the whole, when he's trying to put the lamp back together again. There's definitely a range in their relationship. But then the very tender moments too, when they were sitting on the couch drinking wine. Who drinks wine during Christmas?
Christmas morning.
Christmas morning.
It had to have been like 8 o'clock in the morning.
I mean, it gave me some ideas for this week, but I was surprised by that. Yeah. But no, they had the whole range of things, and that scene was really poignant to me, where you could see her in the background, and she had that smirk on her face when he was trying to put it together, and then the crushing blow of it didn't just the lamp was not going to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to fall apart, and he's going to have to bury it in the backyard.
Yeah.
That stuff happens.
Yeah.
And that's part of real life. So I thought it was very. Maybe the details are not exact, but the sentiment behind it was pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And that's what goes into a relationship. You've got the good, you've got the bad, you've got everything in between. And so to me, the movie felt very authentic because emotionally, with the exception of Rob, you could relate to it.
Yeah.
You knew these people.
Well, and going off of the authenticity, I think this movie does a really good job of blending the more looking through the lens of an 8-year-old child fantastical elements of the film and blending it with this sort of real life understanding that the world, this is what the real world is like, and it is not this kind of child fantasy, and that there are hardships and there's disappointment. And there are growing moments for Ralphie throughout this film where he understands that things aren't exactly the way that he perceives them to be and not what he wants them to be. And that is part of, as any child growing up, that is part of living life and growing up, is realizing that things aren't always the way you want them to be and things aren't always going to be how you think they should be. And that kind of understanding and having those growing moments are key in a child's development. And I think in this film we see a lot of those where, he has his... And I think this is where the fantasy moments where it goes into, this is what it's like when he has his gun and he's shooting off robbers. And this is what it's like when his teacher reads his paper and gives him an A+ and starts writing pluses on the wall. And, I think you have that contrast between these fantastical daydreams that Ralphie has compared to the hard, cruel reality of what the actual scene is. And I think that kind of dichotomy, that shows the real world growing moments for Ralphie and how he is evolving and growing as a character over this period of about a week.
You think he grows?
I think he does. I think he understands, and I think even little moments that are just played for laughs, like the Little Orphan Annie when he gets
that's true,
the code and he figures out it's just an advertisement. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah. I see that.
Even little moments that are just played for laughs are learning moments for Ralphie, and he realizes the world isn't the way I want it to be. The world isn't the way I think it should be. This is the real world, and even something that I think is just completely perfect and has no room for error, like listening to my favorite radio show every single day, and then he finds out it's just a scam to sell things and sell Ovaltine.
I agree. I think that scene, and I think the scene with his mom where she downplayed the fight that he got into, and he said, after this, our relationship was always different.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Do you think the mom knew that how he really hurt his eye at the end?
I hadn't considered it. I hadn't thought about the fact that maybe she didn't just immediately believe him. I don't know if...
So you were thinking she did believe him?
That was my... I never had any reason to believe that she didn't believe him. But I think it's possible. I don't know if the film necessarily gives us, a little aside or a little moment where it would give us some reason to doubt that she believes him. I don't think the film inherently has that. But I think it's always possible that she didn't immediately believe him or didn't just... She did kind of just go along with it as if nothing happened.
She did. And there was no little aside, like when, she did the whole thing with the soap and then, she put the soap in his mouth because he was swearing with the changing the tire.
Yeah.
And then she tried it herself. There was no little aside to know exactly what she was thinking.
Yeah. I really liked that part where she put the soap in her mouth. I really liked that because I think it kind of took us out of the fact that it is an 8-year-old reflecting on his life and looking back at what his childhood was like, and it kind of put us in the moment and almost humanized the parents for a moment. I think a lot of this is all from the perspective of Ralphie, and so the parents aren't necessarily just regular human characters, they're his parents, and they're kind of in a separate place, and then you have a moment like her putting the soap in her mouth to see what is it like that I'm actually doing this to my child, what does that feel like, I don't know.
Because parents are people too.
Yes. And I think I liked moments like little moments like that kind of brought a little bit more to the characters, and just more than just witnessing them for a week in their life, but rather actually giving a little more substance to them.
Do you think this is a family Christmas movie to watch, or would you say this is only really maybe for people that are older? Or
I would say this was definitely a family movie when it came out in '83. But there is there's some language and some harsher things.
Not even that, do you just think that kids would necessarily get, the themes of it?
I don't know. Well, I don't know if the kids would necessarily get the themes.
Kids are too dumb?
Well, I think kids could watch this and enjoy it for what it is. I think it's the same with
kids
any...
today's age?
Yeah, well, I think it's with any kids movie that if there are larger themes and subtext and messages, a lot of that's going to go over their head when they're a kid watching it, but they might still find enjoyment. Look at any of the Pixar movies. Mm-hmm. If a kid watches The Incredibles, they're not going to pick up on all the deeper themes and subtext and messages of that film, but they'll enjoy it for what it is because it's an animated kids movie.
Right.
And I think the same thing can be said for A Christmas Story. They might not pick up on all these things that we're talking about, of reflecting on your life and dynamics and relationships and all these things. They might not pick up on all that more the subtlety of it, but I think they could watch this and just enjoy for a goofy Christmas movie.
But you know what I like about this conversation too, though, is that the types of things that we would say that the kids wouldn't pick up on necessarily, the two layers of how it appeals to kids and how it appeals to adults, it wasn't all sexual. Mm-hmm. There was one joke in it that would be oh, okay, there's a double entendre right there. Yeah. The rest of it is all life. Yeah. It's not going for the cheap shot. There are so many ways. If this movie were made today, I really think... Now I sound like I'm the old guy. If this movie were made today with these young youths...
Naked women.
No, but seriously, if it was made today, my fear would be that it would be complete slapstick, and there would be double entendres all over the place. I felt like there was a lot of quality to this because the themes that people could relate to, you had the one layer where, all right, it's really funny, the bullies are chasing after the kids, and you got the little brother is following behind, and this happens several times. Ralphie, I'm falling, I can't, can't get up. So you've got that going on. Well, that's a nice little gag that everyone enjoys, but then you've got the deeper themes of this that the adults get also, and they can appreciate it. And it wasn't all slapstick. There was slapstick, but not stupid slapstick. Yeah. There was dimension to this, and I think that speaks highly of the movie. That this is different than a lot of other... Definitely better than Home Alone.
What would you say about
that? I think I like this one more than Home Alone.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Took you a second.
Oh, well, I definitely really like Home Alone.
He felt bad about letting you down.
I love Home Alone. I think that's a great film. But I would personally rank this above it. Because I think...
It's more universal.
Yeah, and I would say, like you were saying, it hits on, in more ways than Home Alone does, or even a lot of Christmas holiday movies that we watch, it hits on, well, I think It's a Wonderful Life kind of does this too. It hits on and talks about life and life experiences, and I think that's what you're talking about when you're saying that you watch this and you have kind of the two layers. You have the surface level, which is just watching the movie as entertainment, and then you have the next level, which is kind of, it comes from a place of retrospective. You have to have lived a life in order to be able to look back and reflect on life, and you see that reflection through this film, because the whole movie, through the narration, and the narration reinforces this, the whole film is a reflection.
Yeah. So, Rob, you're not dumb. You're just too young.
Yeah, that might...
That's what it is.
Or you just didn't like the movie.
No, he likes it more now than he did before.
Talking about it, yes, I can definitely appreciate it a little bit more. But again, I don't think I could ever, unless I was with a group of people. If I was by myself,
you're not gonna watch it again.
If I was by myself and I was like, "Oh, I want to watch a Christmas movie," This wouldn't be my first choice. No, again, I would choose The Night Before over this. I would choose Alf over this. I would choose
What was The Night Before?
It was on the last episode of Movie Night Tonight.
The Night Before. What movie is that?
That's the one with Seth Rogen and Anthony Mackie and Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
A lot of poop humor.
No, that's fine.
Tons of double entendres.
I'm fine with that, but this stands the test of time.
It definitely is a wholesome film. I'll give you that.
It wasn't that wholesome. I was surprised actually how many times they said "son of a bitch" and "ass."
Yeah.
I was very surprised.
And I going back to what you were saying before about
what if it was
what if it was remade today? I think a lot of those parts where they're swearing and all that, a lot of those parts that aren't so wholesome as you put it, that would all be left out. I think this would definitely be, if it was remade today, it would be a lot cleaner than it was.
Seriously? Oh, I think it would just be the opposite.
Huh? In '83, you could get away with a lot more in a PG rating than you could today. Either you make it a PG-13 movie, in which case you could get away with...
There was nothing PG-13 about this.
You couldn't say son of a bitch, I don't think, in a PG movie today. Can you say son of a bitch in a PG movie
Yes,
today?
you can. You can say it on television.
I don't think so.
Well, it has to be TV-14.
Well, back then they didn't have PG-13.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Problem.
You could get away
when did
with...
PG-13 come out? 1984.
And Christmas Story was 83. Filmed in 82.
Wait, when did they invent PG-13? Linked to Spielberg, who in 1984 became a lightning rod for parental ire for... Oh, you know what? The producer of Gremlins and the Temple of Doom.
So the PG-13 rating came about in 1984, which was just
year
after.
But let me
Christmas
say,
Story.
there was a big difference between Temple of Doom and Gremlins and this movie.
Okay. Well,
I mean, this movie, you had a bunch of dogs coming in, stealing the turkey. Gremlins, you had a microwaved critter being...
Well, so I guess I posed a question. If this movie was made today, say it got announced today, Christmas Story is being remade, it's coming out in 2020, and it's got a whole new cast, is it PG-13 or is it PG?
PG-13. PG-13, I think.
They could say the F word.
What? In PG? Well, once they can.
Once they can.
Twice.
How many times would they actually say it? It's more fun to say fudge.
I just think
that's the whole. That's the whole.
Even
point of
with
it.
those entendres and stuff like that, it would have to boost it up to PG-13.
What?
I
the
think
blue
they
ball?
would. I think they would.
The bowling ball. There was one. There was one thing.
I think if they were remaking this movie, they would make it a PG.
Yeah,
movie.
even if they remake, they would add
Right,
stuff to it.
because of all the other things I said, which
Yeah.
is that they would downgrade the movie.
Yeah, that's what I was
But this
saying.
movie, if this movie came out in if this movie came out in 1985 as is,
it would be
Yeah, I
PG.
agree.
it would be PG.
I agree. No, I agree.
It would be
with what you're saying.
PG.
Well, okay, yeah, in '85, but
Yes.
in today's standards,
If they
this,
remade it.
well, no, if this exact movie, the way it is, came out today, I think it would be PG-13.
I think it'd be close.
It would be close, but I think they would edge it over. No, probably what would happen is they would say to the studio, this is going to be a PG-13 movie unless if you make some cuts, and then they would cut a couple of lines out and release it as a PG movie.
That's not true. You guys are just wrong.
It'd be close. That's all I'm saying. I can't give you.
Close, but no. That's the final line. No. So, all right. So another thing,
Yes.
Rob, I'm very interested in hearing this.
Yes.
So you be quiet. So I'm interested, Nathaniel. So I'm interested in hearing this. There are a lot of things that come out of the movie that are like in the basic common popular culture. The leg lamp, you'll shoot your eye out, like all these different things. Had you known all those before?
Yeah. So, a guy at work always says like the shoot your eye out or the fudge thing too. I hear those all the time.
So did you know all of that already, or did you know they came from this specific movie?
Yes.
Like,
just because I think it is a big part of pop culture as it is today, especially like because like they have ornaments of that leg in like CVS. I've seen it.
Well,
before.
so I guess...
on our tree.
Well, so I think, are we at the point where the things that are taken from this movie that become part of pop culture, have they surpassed the film themselves to the point where we just see a leg lamp and we just think of it on its own? Or is it something where it's directly tied to the film, where we see a leg lamp and we go, oh, leg lamp, that's from that movie A Christmas Story?
It's correct what you just said.
Which one? He said
The second
The
one.
latter.
Oh, okay.
Because like if I feel like if you went out in public and said like the fudge, but I didn't really say. I think
people would know what
I'd say
movie
like
you're talking
7 out of 10 people would know what you were talking about.
Well, because there are definitely movies where elements of those films become adopted into pop culture, but then the fact that where they originated from is lost. So there are things that everybody universally knows, but they don't know it comes from this place. I think with A Christmas Story, there are things about A Christmas Story that become adopted into pop culture, like except I didn't say fudge, like the leg lamp, like you'll shoot your eye out, but people know that they are tied to A Christmas Story. They haven't become completely divorced from the film itself.
And what I would say is they make that connection to the movie, but the reason why those things stand out so much is not because they are so funny in and of themselves, but because there's a chord that's struck with the movie itself, the themes in the movie.
Yeah.
And so people grab onto these things, the leg lamp,
Fragile
must be Italian. All these little things because they have an emotional connection to the movie, not just a funny gag from the movie, but emotional connection to the movie.
Well, yeah, that's how they would become iconicized. Is that people watch them in the movie and it resonates with people because of what it means for the film and in the context of the film. The things like the leg lamp, like Fragile, they mean something to people when they watch it within the film, and then that's how it becomes perpetuated in pop culture.
But don't you think there are times where there's something funny in a movie or something that's big in a movie, and it's that thing itself is the thing that resonates with people rather than the deeper meaning of the movie?
I think there are definitely times, but I think more likely a thing is going to become part of pop culture and become iconicized if it does mean something for the people who watch it and for the generation who watches it.
Okay.
And maybe that's different. Maybe that is a generational thing because people in 1983 watch this, and in that time they watch it, and it becomes part of their pop culture, and then it continues into our pop culture of 2018 because it meant something for people when they first watched it, and it continued and was continually perpetuated to the point where everybody knows it. But something that comes out now, we watch it, maybe we only latch onto the thing itself and not the deeper context of what it means within the film. So maybe it is a generational thing.
So as the one person in the room who was here when this movie came out in 1983, filmed in 1982, I saw this movie in the theater, and it was a hit. Like, people watched it. I don't think people were quoting it. It wasn't until it ended up on, VHS or DVD or
playing on TV.
Playing on the television. That's when I think it really, really took off. I think it was popular, and it struck a chord, but I don't think anyone was really quoting it. Until much later. But I still think it struck a chord back then. Because I think it had to have struck a chord when it originally came out, so that years later, when it was on loop all the time, 24 hours of the movie the night before Christmas and everything, that it would resonate with people, and people would want to watch it because it reminded them of their childhood, and it reminded them of their childhood because it had themes that were bigger than just a kid that should have been taken out of his family's custody by DSS because they left him and went on some vacation someplace. That's just criminal.
Well, it speaks...
Not even once, but twice.
How stupid! Four times?
They made
the
four
other
of those
ones
things.
weren't really Kevin I think they were another character.
No, I think they recast
it. wasn't
the actor.
Macaulay Culkin.
Oh, see that? They took the kid away from them, and then they screwed it up with another kid.
But I think that does speak to the universal nature of the film, that you have the audience who sees it in theaters in 1983, and then the next year when it's playing on TV before Christmas, leading up to it, and it goes on, and year after year after year, more and more people watch it, and it resonates with them. And each year it gets further and further away from when it originally came out and the audience it was originally written for, but people can still connect to it, and people still identify with it, even though we're getting further and further away from when it was originally written for. And I think that speaks to how universal the themes are, how universal the characters are, and how much it can actually still resonate with people.
Now, it's interesting. I was just looking up to see what else came out in 1983. Vacation came out in 1983. Vacation was the first movie. and then they had the sequel,
Christmas
Vacation.
Yeah.
What did you end up watching that as one of your?
Not as part of the
Yeah.
month. So, as we bring this discussion to a close, let's go around real quick and say what our final thoughts on the film are, starting with Rob.
Well, again, like I said, it's not a movie that I don't think I'm going to be thinking about, or it will be a new Christmas tradition. But I am glad I saw it to say that, because it is, whether I think it or not, it is a classic because of how it has stood the test of time with other people and how it is in our pop culture. And there are certain things that you see now and you know them from that movie. But for me, I didn't really get that much out of it as entertainment wise, so I don't necessarily think I would watch it again, like out of the blue.
Yeah.
Probably I would have to be with someone else.
Yeah.
Should we give ratings or?
You can if you'd like.
All right, give it two Christmas trees out of 4.
What? Oh.
Final thoughts?
I just made that up. Don't take that as a...
Not his, that's for sure. I think that this movie is a classic Christmas movie because I think that it hits on all the major themes of what it means to be a human with a heart.
That's something.
Somebody who's lived life with feeling and emotion, has experienced love and loss and all these other things. I think it's definitely more than 2 Christmas trees out of 4. Holy crap.
It's at least 3.
I think it's more than 2 Christmas trees out of 4.
I
don't think it's 5 Christmas trees out of 4 or 5.
So, is it not 4 Christmas trees out of 4? So then, by default, is it 3 out of 4?
Well, if you have to trap me,
You
like
can do a half a tree if you want. You could do a half a tree.
I'd say. Can I do like
3 full and 1 Charlie Brown?
You could throw in a couple needles too, even it out.
I'd say this is maybe approaching 3.
Approaching 3
out of 4. Approaching 3.
So
out
we
of 4.
have a 2 out of 4.
Maybe a 2.75
trees.
A 2.75 trees.
So going into my final thoughts on the film, this is one Christmas movie that I have to watch every year. I love watching this movie. It's a tradition of mine that I try to watch this one every year. I love this movie. For me, I think it more than any of the other movies we've talked about this month, this embodies Christmas for me. When I think of Christmas and when I think of, I want to watch a Christmas movie, I think of A Christmas Story. And I think it's because of everything we've talked about over this past hour is that it's not just the fact that the film embodies the spirit of Christmas and themes of Christmas, but larger human themes and larger themes of life. And while the crux of the film is Christmas, it transcends the holiday of Christmas. It's not just about Christmas. It's not regulated solely to Christmas. It is about life and the human experience. And I think it's those larger elements of the film and those more universal themes that year after year, generation after generation, we can still appreciate and get something out of this movie. I think it's those elements of the film that really hold it up to not just be a good Christmas movie, but a good movie in general. So those would be my final thoughts on A Christmas Story. So this is the end of our discussion of A Christmas Story, and this is the final episode of the first season of Movie Night Tonight. Next month, starting in January, we're starting up with the second season of Movie Night Tonight, and we will be talking about, for January, we will be talking about music movies. Now, if you'll remember, in September we did music movies. We're doing music movies again because there are a few movies that we didn't get to talk about that we absolutely need to talk about. So keep your eye out for the first installment of the new season of Movie Night Tonight. And our first movie we're talking about for music movies is going to be Almost Famous.
That's a good movie.
That is a great movie. I can't wait.
It's a really good movie.
Cameron Crowe classic.
That's one I've seen.
So be on the lookout for that. All new episodes drop on Saturdays, so be sure to keep your eye out for the next installment of Movie Night Tonight. Once again, I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe for more content. Be sure to follow us on all of our various social medias at Movie Night TNT. That's Movie Night TNT. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and through there you can get the links to our YouTube, to our Spotify, to our iTunes, where you can watch every episode of the previous season and all upcoming episodes of the new seasons that drop on Saturdays. So until we talk about Almost Famous next week, thanks for listening.